We actually have our next guest on, everyone. We actually have Rabia. She's joining us today. And thank you so much, Rabia, for coming on. It's awesome.
Thanks for having me again on this platform. It's really great.
Yeah, Rabia is a former human rights commissioner. She's an activist. She's a consultant, motivational speaker. And I believe that you could correct me if I'm wrong. I think you were a former member of the Canadian the Disability WP.
I am actually the national director right now of Disability Without Poverty.
Oh, nice. Well, thank you very much for coming by. It's a pleasure. I like to get people with a lot of insight of what's going on. And I guess the big question of the day that everybody's been asking, Rabia, is where is the bill? I mean, the federal government came out with their budget, and everybody's sitting with their hands at the end of the table, and they're just waiting and watching and listening to the budget. And Krista Freeland giving the budget out, and they're saying, "Well, there must be something for the Canadians with disabilities. The financial relief. Finally, we get to hear something." And then, well, not so much.
Where's the bill? Like, it's funny that you asked me the question, because we've actually packaged this question into a whole broad-based campaign that's been going on social media for a few weeks now, and we are asking that question through social media, through media, through meetings, in private meetings, in public meetings, wherever we can. We're asking the question, where is the bill? What's happening with the Canada Disability Benefit? So yes, this is the number one question on the minds of Canadians with disabilities, their families, friends, and allies. People with disabilities who are living in poverty, the bill is very important to them, and that is the Canada Disability Benefit. So why are we calling it the bill? Well, let's rewind to 2020, when the pandemic hit. As people with disabilities, we felt forgotten. The emergency measures didn't take accessibility into account. We started to tell people to mask up, and we didn't realize what the impact of masking up was going to be on people with hearing loss who depend on facial impressions and lip reading and all that kind of stuff. And we didn't consider people who have certain mental health issues or anxieties and stuff, who cannot be walking around in indoor claustrophobic spaces with masks on. We didn't take into account social distancing, that people with vision loss or using guide dogs may experience difficulty with social distancing. And as people with disabilities, we faced further attitudes from able-bodied everyday Canadians, because they judged us for not maintaining social distancing. They judged some of us for not wearing masks and all this kind of stuff, because we had put these rules in place to protect everybody, and here were these disabled people, some of them violating these rules, right? So we had that kind of stuff that emerged. Then we had emergency measures to remedy the impact of the lockdown. So our federal government introduced really quickly $2,000 a month for working age Canadians with or without disabilities, as long as they had met the threshold of a certain level of income in that time frame to qualify, and their jobs were impacted and they were no longer receiving a paycheck. They got this $2,000 a month that wasn't really means tested or household connected or anything like that. So some bigger families cashed in. I mean, I had a kid working whose work was impacted. I had a couple of kids in uni that got the student benefit, right? So there was the working age Canadians benefit, there was the student benefit, there was the one-time only seniors benefit. Whoa, all of this happened in spring pretty fast, like rapid fire. And then we waited and we waited and we waited and we kept waiting. And finally, we got the one-time only payment of $600 directly deposited into our accounts if we qualified for the disability tax credit under CRA. And not all disabled people do. So that was the caveat. We had to qualify for the disability tax credit, the DTC, which we know has all kinds of flaws, and we want to see all kinds of changes with it. And that work is also being done slowly but surely, we hope, some of it. Anyway, that fall, the Prime Minister in his throne speech said, hey, you people with disabilities, those of you that are financially struggling, because we know most of you do, you don't work, or you can't work, or people won't hire you, or whatever, right? Your provincial assistance ain't enough for you to pay your bills, because now we know that able-bodied Canadians need $2,000 a month to live. We need to do something more permanent for people with disabilities, and that was the Canada Disability Benefit. It was a promise on the table. That promise on the table was woven into Minister Carla Qualtrough's mandate letter as well. And that promise was restated in last year's budget when $11.9 million were allocated for a consultation process, a disability inclusion action plan consultation process, which also includes financial security as a pillar and includes the Canada Disability Benefit. So that was done. We got mentioned in spring budget 2021. And then we didn't hear a heck of a lot. And then on IDPD, International Day of People with Disabilities, the PM's statement again restated the commitment to the Canada Disability Benefit. We, Disability Without Poverty, had a private meeting with a few select people with disabilities, more broadly beyond our organization, and the minister, with the Prime Minister at the end of just before the legislature dissolved in June, the Parliament dissolved in June for an election, and we were reassured that the Canada Disability Benefit was a genuine priority of the government. The bill, lovingly known as C-35, was tabled, and lo and behold, an election was called because we had a minority government, and there you go, the bill was introduced in Parliament and did not go to committee, did not go to first reading, second reading, third reading, and all those readings that have to happen in Ottawa, okay, through the House of Commons and the Senate. So that did not happen, and government was dissolved. The election happened. We mobilized around the election. We did an open letter signed by 200 prominent Canadians with and without disabilities, calling on government, once the Liberal government was re-elected as a minority government. We sent a letter to the Prime Minister, to the Minister of Finance, and to Minister Qualtrough saying, fast track the Canada Disability Benefit and ensure joint design. There needs to be inclusive design. People with disabilities need to be involved from design to implementation. That letter resulted in us also conducting a parliamentary e-petition that Michelle Hewitt, the chair of Disability Without Poverty, launched, and the co-chair, and that petition garnered 17,874 signatures over 60 days. It closed on January the 11th. It was we needed an MP to sponsor it. We went to Green Party MP Mike Maurice, who championed the cause wholeheartedly and took that petition forward, read it in the House in Parliament on February the 10th, and we received a response from the federal government last week. We on the 29th, we are reassured by Minister Qualtrough that this bill is still high priority. It is high priority on the Prime Minister's part. However, there was no mention of it in the budget last week. Now, we were disappointed, but we were also not surprised, because $11.9 million had been invested last year to study all this and to do the work and to come back with something before more money gets asked for. We would have loved for them to take our submission into account and allocate further money for the design work, for the joint design work, but that didn't make its way into the budget, which is unfortunate. So where is the bill? Well, from what we know, the bill is a priority for the minister. It is up to cabinet to set it as a priority and to refer it to the House of Commons to introduce it into the House. And you know what, Brent, it comes down to our values as Canadians, right?
Absolutely.
This is a question of values, right? Our values are defined by our Charter of Rights and Freedoms. Our values are defined by our human rights codes. Our values are defined by any kind of legislation that we adopt to improve the lives of vulnerable people, including people with disabilities, right? So if we are true to those values, those need to be demonstrated in programs and services and products, right? Like government products. A benefit is a product.
Yeah,
it needs to be demonstrated in that. If government is creating a product that is just putting us into deeper and deeper poverty and is stripping our dignity and our respect, we are undermining those values of dignity and respect.
One of the questions that I wanted to ask, and I already asked Kim Pate earlier on the show, there are several PWD advocates on Twitter. I kind of faced a Twitter storm this morning, and they're saying that the only reason that Carla is introducing the Canada Disability Benefit is to avoid doing anything about the CRPD and just avoid the obligations, anything to do with PWD rights or disability rights. And I can sort of see where that's coming from, but I just wanted to get your feedback on that. As like, what do you have to say about that? Something like that.
Well, for someone who's really pushed hard and asked a lot of questions and sort of forced my way at a seat at a table, as a racialized woman with a disability, I'm the only racialized woman with a disability on Carla's Minister's Disability Advisory Group that was formed under COVID. So I'm the new kid on the block who makes a lot of noise. I am very much so a systems disruptor. I ask some of those tough questions. I'm also very diplomatic about my relationships with people, especially when there are people who have power who I want to be able to influence with my ideas. I've gotten to know the minister in these last 2 years or so. She is a person with a disability, so her heart's in the right place for doing right by people with disabilities. She recognizes the reality of poverty that people live in. She speaks very genuinely and passionately about it. That's what I can tell you, like at an individual level. At a strategic level, there could be all kinds of political strategies going on. I don't know. But I believe that the Canada Disability Benefit is coming from a sincere place to address disability poverty. We just need to push and mobilize and popularize this and push for joint design so that it's not just left in the hands of bureaucracy to figure out